Apple Music Connect, Rivian's iOS app, and Apple Podcasts Go Video. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by MacVoices Live, our weekly live panel discussion of what is going on in the Apple space, as well as the larger tech world, and how it is impacting you. Join us live at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, or whatever time that is wherever you are, at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV, and participate in the chat, or catch the edited and segmented versions of the show on the regular MacVoices channels and feeds. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. And in case it's not obvious, this is MacVoices Live because we're on YouTube at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV. It's Tuesday night. We would love to have you with us. I have a bunch of our friends in the chat room already, and you could be one of our friends too in the chat room if you would just sign in and say hello. I started out with not a lot for this week, and all of a sudden it just ballooned, both in Apple news and non-Apple news, but a lot of tech news. So we're going to get through a fair percentage of it, I'm sure. So let's go around the room, see who's here, and then we'll get taking off. David Ginsburg is here. He's in an undisclosed location, or at least that's what I think because of his blurred background. David, good to have you. I don't know if you want to explain. Or
yeah, I'm happy to explain. I got lots of boxes behind me because I am moving to a new home. So I'd rather you just see a blur than to see all the mess I have behind me right now because it's hard to put boxes in places I've just discovered here. So while you're, because they pile up pretty quickly here. So, but no, it's great to be here, and I was definitely didn't want to miss this week, and glad that we can talk about a lot of the great stuff we got lined up today.
Good. I've often thought, Dave, you need to be in a home. So
okay.
Oh, Chuck's on fire tonight.
Yeah. Eric Bolden is here, and instead of having 2 eyes tonight, Eric has 4 that are very prominent. Eric, good to have you.
Feel like something's watching me.
Yeah. So tell us about your friend.
Tonight's visitor is a barred owl. Not sure why they were barred, but it's here anyway. Sorry, bad humor. Yes, this is an owl that I took a picture of while looking for swans. I took the wrong turn, and as I was trying to find my way back to the lake, this owl and another owl got into an argument over the top of my poor Prius, hit the hood, and then this one was, sitting there stunned in a tree saying, "Please take my picture." So I did.
He doesn't look stunned. He just looks inquisitive.
I think it's sort of hard to tell with owls, but he wasn't moving, even though, I was right next to him with a camera, and I think he would have been more scared if he hadn't just...
I got nothing. Although you said it was bad humor, is there any other kind of humor on this show? Marty Jencius, Marty is here, and he just looks like he's chomping at the bit to say something. Marty, what words of wisdom do you have for us?
Yeah, you took the line right out of my mouth. I got nothing. After Eric's fascinating story about the owl, Eric, it's not bad humor. I'm laughing inside at you.
I admire your ability to hold it in. Speaking of holding it in, here's Jeff Gamet.
Hey, Chuck, how's it going? Great to be here tonight.
Good to have you, as always. Sneaking in under the wire, Mr. Jim Rea. Jim, welcome. I'm glad you were able to make it.
Sorry I was late. I had to put on my underpants.
We appreciate else. It. We appreciate it. Anything else you want to elaborate on with that, or we're just going to go with that?
I just got out of the shower.
Oh, okay. That too is probably.
I thought about coming on in my bathrobe, but
that would have been fantastic.
Yeah, that would have been.
It might happen in the future. Then you're not discouraging me.
I can live in hope.
Oh
Gosh,
man, this is getting bad.
it
This
is.
is getting bad. All right, well let's kick off with some Apple news. Apple
How did we do
has,
that?
yeah, I know, yeah, what a concept. Apple has, excuse me, Apple has resurrected Apple Music Connect as a promotional resource for labels and distributors. Okay, I don't know if it's been made pretty clear by. Man, sorry, don't know what's wrong here. It's made.
You're all choked up thinking about that bathrobe, aren't you?
No, no, that's the one thing that does not have me choked up, Jeff. No, every article I've read about this indicates that this is not for us, obviously, but this is just for the music industry people and the artists and the people behind the promotion. And so my question to you all is, good idea, bad idea? Competing with Spotify in some fashion that maybe we usually don't get to see or don't get to hear about because Spotify does something like this. And is this better or is it worse? Anybody have any insight into this?
Sure.
Good.
Why not?
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. I think that there's a possibility, although we'll have to wait and see how this plays out, that this may address one of the issues that I have with pretty much all the streaming services, which is discoverability. So Apple may be giving the artists and the labels tools that help enhance discoverability. And if so, great. Because right now, I think we're still at a place, decades after we started dealing with streaming content, where discoverability is still the weak point in this whole process, the weakest point in this process, a weak point in this process. I'll stop.
Marty?
Yeah, I was thinking the same lines along with Jeff. And just a couple of weeks ago after the show, we spent a good hour tinkering around with Tumblr. And for me, this is kind of a social media space for bands who are not necessarily big label bands to be able to gather their music there and maybe find a following, or at least send people to that place to be able to listen to it. I think it's pretty cool. I think it catches up though with what some other sources and other places are doing too.
I guess I'm wondering too if this is the case. Apple tried something like this, not exactly the same, but sort of along these lines for bands to promote themselves a while back, and it just fell flat.
I wouldn't say they're the same.
You know, well, from a promotional standpoint, Jeff?
No.
Okay.
No. What Apple did before with I guess they called that Music Connect also, which highlights another problem Apple has, which is coming up with names for things that aren't the same names they've been using already. So what Apple created before was sort of like a one-directional social media platform, so that artists could hype, promote what they're doing. And the idea was it created a sort of behind the scenes feel for their audience. This is not that at all. I mean, they share a similar name, but this is about just the promotional side and the awareness side. This is not about trying to do something that creates a dialogue, if you will, with your audience.
And I think people, at least I hang around a lot of college age kids. They're really interested in finding sort of an indie music scene or a less large label music scene. And this is just so it maybe didn't work in the format that it was last time, but I think there's an audience for it this time.
Jeff, where I was going with my point was, and you're absolutely right. I guess what I'm thinking about though is that I wonder if bands and labels and everybody associated with the music business has become a little more savvy, a little more intelligent about, first of all, the opportunity, but second of all, the need, and especially focused on the discoverability part, because I think that was one thing that maybe Apple was ahead of its time in trying to provide one place for bands to go to do that in a streaming service environment. And it just wasn't executed well, or the folks who were supposed to feed it didn't get it, and so they didn't feed it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the big problem with what Apple was doing before is that Apple straight up sucks at social. They have shown that consistently, but they are good at promotion, and what they're offering now is about promotion, not social. So yeah, hopefully they've got it right this time.
Okay, fair point. Eric?
I also noticed this lets promoters put all of their assets in media and samples or whatever into one spot that's not somebody else's service. So Apple's not relying on somebody else where you could then wander off and join them instead of staying with Apple. So maybe it's kind of looking forward to trying to keep people from migrating away elsewhere, or give a line to kind of pull people in to the Apple ecosystem.
Again, we probably we'll never talk about this again unless it's either has some spectacular successes or it just crashes and burns and fades away. And because the tech media is usually pretty good about pointing those things out. But I just thought it was interesting with all the Spotify news we're getting to see that Apple is trying to do something. And to Jeff's point about discoverability, at least maybe some way figure out a way to address it. We can hope. Okay, so we've been consistently talking about cars and Apple and tech. Now Rivian is coming out with an Apple Watch app that will control the vehicle controls and give digital key support. Is this feeling inconsistent to anyone?
Inconsistent?
Inconsistent. I mean, I think Rivian is one that they have supported the idea of CarPlay. So maybe this is just a natural thing, or do I have that wrong?
No, they're totally. We will never do CarPlay.
Okay, so if they're never going to do CarPlay, then why are they doing an Apple Watch app?
They support Apple Music. I think they support phone as a key. You can do phone calls. So they just, I think foolishly, but their position is we don't want that Apple crap on our screen.
So they're going to put their Rivian crap on my arm.
Exactly. Because,
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for the show this week, everyone.
There's an edit
Where
point.
can people find you?
There's an edit point. Oh, boy.
What?
You guys are trying to get me thrown off of Apple Podcasts is what's happening. Dave, say something intelligent.
Yeah, no, I would say, they're adding something to the passive key system. It's separate from CarPlay. They wanted to have automation. I've been exploring a lot of automation now with my new house and looking at some different things. And some things are being supported with Apple HomeKit in that case, and some are not. But it's indirectly are supported. But I think this is something that they don't have to be full into the CarPlay ecosystem, but they can have the vehicle keys or the digital keys on an iPhone or on an Apple Watch, and just make it simple and not be part of the rest of the stuff. Like you said, they're using Apple Music and other stuff, but they just don't want to be in the CarPlay, and that's fine. I understand. I wouldn't buy a Rivian because it doesn't have CarPlay. So, but if they, more power to them, if they want to be able to at least get into some way into the Apple ecosystem when it comes to keys, go for it.
I saw a YouTube video. Somebody apparently has come up, a third party has come up with a box
I
that
wouldn't
will
be
plug
surprised.
into a Rivian and puts CarPlay on it. I was kind of frustrated because they didn't really talk much in the video about what was actually going on. They had did a bunch of editorializing like we've done over the years about whether, the pros and cons of CarPlay, but it's like, yeah, we know all that, but tell me how this box you plugged in works. But I think this doesn't have anything to do with CarPlay. It's a separate, completely separate issue. I'm pretty sure that Rivian has an iOS app too, and so you can do things like remotely start charging and check your battery level and stuff like that. But they're just like, well, we have maps. The car has maps built in, and we don't want you to use Apple Maps or Waze in the car instead of our map system. I've never really heard a convincing reason why, because they don't even charge for it. They're not even making subscription money off of that, I don't think. So why are they so adamant about it? But they are. And they keep saying, oh, you'll thank us,
Well, we're back to the discussion we've had ad nauseum about the car
right. But
companies.
the bottom line is this has nothing to do with CarPlay. It's they're basically we're adding phones and watches as peripherals to the car. They're perfectly happy to do that. What they don't want to do is make the car a peripheral to the phone.
That's an interesting way to look at it, Jim. But I'm looking at the article, and it says with a tap of your watch, you can lock and unlock and lock the doors, sound the alarm, and vent the windows, as well as a passive walk up to just if you walk up, the vehicle will unlock automatically. And it's like,
I think
okay,
those are things you could do with your phone already.
Maybe so.
So now you could do it with even if you're an animal and don't carry your phone with you, but you have your watch.
I just looked up the app, and it gives you a lot of control through your iPhone of what's going on with your car. Like you can even control when it charges.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, the phone is a peripheral to the car. That they're happy to do that. They just don't want it the other way around.
Yeah,
I think Apple should tell them, hey, you can't have an iOS app.
I like the idea that it vents windows. So if a Rivian owner ever locks their ego in the car, they can remotely roll the windows down so they can its ego can get a little oxygen.
That's really thoughtful. Yeah.
Yeah. So
unless the batteries died.
You're allowed to do some things with your Apple device. You're just not allowed to have Apple devices on your car. It just there seems to be a double standard.
I think you're starting to appreciate the absurdity of it, Chuck.
Well, I am, Jim, and that's kind of where this whole thing. It's sort of like Dave. You just referenced some home automation. Yeah. It's like the home automation. Every time we think, oh, we're going to get we got Matter, we got Threads, everything's going to be fine, and then somebody does something to screw it up, and we're back to having various factions.
I think a lot of that's just incompetence.
Well, probably so, but this is Rivian. This is company.
But this is deliberate. This Rivian, not putting CarPlay. They decided not to do that. I'll bet in Normal, Illinois, or in their headquarters here in Southern California, I bet they have a Rivian that runs CarPlay. They won't let you have it, but
yeah, Eric, your observation.
Well, yeah, you're not allowed to have a life outside of Rivian. As long as you have your Rivian and your, side phone thing, you're great. But you can't use a walking map to go onto a trail and then while you're eating lunch, set up the next destination, hop into your vehicle and head off. No, you've got to, negotiate with your vehicle to switch from your phone to it's just tedious and obnoxious.
So, sort of talking about switching from phones and all, from one thing to another. Apple Podcasts is finally going to support video. So, good on you, Apple. That's fantastic. It's kind of long overdue. And obviously, it's near and dear to my heart and the heart of at least a few of the participants here. So I'm anxious to see just how it's going to be supported, what it's going to require on the back end, because I've looked only in a cursory fashion at this and trying to figure out. Because speaking for myself, this show already is offered in an RSS feed. Obviously, that RSS feed can only be, from a video standpoint, viewed by certain players. Now it will be available on Apple Podcasts as a video as well as audio. So I'm happy about this, and I think it only makes sense as podcasts continue to creep more into the entertainment and information space.
Yep. I'll add a comment to that. We did talk about this last week on In Touch with iOS. I showed you that the MacVoices video played great. Because you have a video feed, it was great. I brought it up, came up on my beta device, and works flawlessly. It opens right up and it plays, and you can. The one cool thing about the feature that did add was the fact that you can toggle it right back over to audio. Like, let's say you're going into your car and you don't want to watch the video anymore. You're going to go over to audio. Don't have to switch. You just tap a button, boom, you're in audio format. And then if you want to switch back, same thing. So they've added some pretty nifty features when it comes to that. So I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe Pocket Casts or Overcast, some of those others. I know Overcast doesn't do video, but that do that too. But it's a good feature to see. That and then bravo Apple. About time you did this. It's been a long time coming.
Marty, how do you feel about this? Because you do video, you record things as video, but you don't necessarily release them as a video podcast.
I released them through YouTube once I stripped the audio out of it and put it on a audio service to get it distributed. So I have all sorts of technical questions about this, how this is going to work. Is it going to pull from the RSS feed that I might have set up from other sources and then just Apple picks it up that way? If I do some editing on my audio that takes a lot of the garbage out of my audio and essentially makes the audio podcast shorter. How does that work if I have a longer platform of video podcast? Do I have to edit both or clean up at least both ends of it in order for someone to switch from audio to video? I have lots of questions. I presume it's all going to be operated through Apple Podcast Connect, because I just signed in there and saw that it has advertisement about it and such. So I'm still poking around.
Yeah, Barry in the chat room, sort of along the lines of what you just said, Marty, says, "What if the video and audio versions of the same podcast are edited differently?" Mm-hmm. If I understand from what I've read, the audio podcast will be the audio to the video podcast, and the video podcast will just be the video podcast.
Right.
But like Marty said, there are situations like when we do the live version of this show, there is the live that includes the pre-show, and after dark, of course, which we make available for about the 12 to 36 hours, and then put everything else, shut it down and make it available only to our Patreon subscribers. So, what does that mean for that? I'm using me just as an example, but if you listen to the audio version of the audio version or the video version, they're the same. Just one has the pictures and one doesn't, because I don't do separate editing. But now, does this give you the opportunity to, or the requirement to?
I think the folks who listen to the audio portion of my programs get a shorter program because it's cutting out some of the long stretches of silence and such that happen from the video portion of the show, cuts out my and does some other things. So I don't know if this is good for me, and I don't know how it's going to potentially improve listenership.
Well, that's where it goes to for me. I mean, I do the same thing you do. We have a live stream every week, and I leave it up on YouTube. I've been attempting to dive into doing what Chuck does and having the video, but the thing is, that's extra time that you have to do that he takes at doing the edits of the video, and then having a separate feed for the video and a separate feed for the audio. So I don't have that where he does that because that. I mean, I'm understanding, Chuck. You go through that every week with the show, and you have to do both versions because you have to upload it to 2 separate RSS feeds. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody else does that. I mean, I'm sure other podcasters do that, and I think that's the only way it's going to work because you have to have a feed that has the video, but it can convert to audio with a touch of a button in the podcast app, which is nice.
Well, and Ken Rea on his show when he was discussing this, brought up, I think, this something that was kind of obvious, unless you are not a podcast creator. This is all Apple Podcasts, and so if I want to appeal to someone that uses any other podcast catching software, I'm just going to have those 2 RSS feeds. Apple may be able to do it within their world for just one, but the other thing too, Marty, I wanted to address for what you were talking about though, because there are plenty of YouTube folks out there that do this, that use some of that software that cuts out the ums, the ahs, the long silences, and they're all jump cuts.
Yeah, that's why
it drives me crazy. I mean, it just looks so sloppy, and yet I guess maybe I'm a bit of a purist, but it looks like, oh yeah, it's however AI wants to edit this is fine.
Yeah. I mean, the video that I do is raw, with the exception of some large, mistakes where I put markers down and then close it up. But there's not a lot of jump cuts in it that you can do. I mean, you run it through a video processor, it'll take all that stuff out and you'll get max headroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good example. Jeff, I want to get your thoughts on one other aspect of this. And if we're doing too much inside baseball, folks, I apologize, but I feel like you need to start thinking about this as you consume podcasts, in whatever form you choose. Jeff, does this, by Apple supporting this, are they the 800-pound gorilla in the room? Does this require or demand that other podcatchers add some of these features in?
Well, yes, I suppose. Yeah.
I don't think so.
Unless it's a podcatcher that caters to people that aren't interested in the video part. And then if that's the case, no, it doesn't matter. But if you want to compete directly with Apple in this space, then you have to look at matching some features. I think the real competition here is actually Spotify, because Spotify has been supporting the video podcast thing for a while. Although the way they do it is more inside baseball people. If you want to have audio and video podcasts that you can select on Spotify, you're posting 2 different podcasts. Otherwise, you post your video podcast and Spotify generates the audio version for you.
I forgot about that, Jeff. I forgot about that they take the audio and publish it as your, they take the audio from your video and publish that as the audio feed, which yes. I know I knew that at one time, because that's why I'm pretty sure, unless they have scooped it up, that I don't have the video version on Spotify, because I didn't want that loss of control.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it shows up as a completely separate, independent, if you will, show. So you have a higher likelihood of fracturing your audience on Spotify. I'm curious to see how Apple does this. Have they figured out a way to not fracture that audience? And if so, okay, that's a really cool thing. And that's what people are really going to need to compete with, or developers need to compete with.
Jim?
I am going to question your premise that Apple's the 800-pound gorilla. Maybe they are, but isn't YouTube the million-pound gorilla? I think YouTube owns this space, and Apple's going to struggle to even get anybody to even notice it, and both listeners and content creators.
Jim, my interpretation of what Chuck said, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, is that you meant Apple as the 800-pound gorilla in the Apple-centric podcatcher market. Because no. Jim's right. YouTube is the name. That's what everyone has to try and compete with.
So no, Jeff, what I meant by the 800-pound gorilla comment was that they're the oldest podcast directory around, if you will. I mean, that's where podcasts came from, is from the iPod. And so that's what I meant by it. And probably more audio. The YouTube thing, Jim, I'm going to kind of take Jeff's question and turn it to you. If they're the 1,000-pound gorilla, are you talking about for video? Because if for video, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, but that's what this, Apple's trying to get into the video space, right? That's what this is about. So to me, the competition it's YouTube. It's like, watch the video here instead of on YouTube. Because is there any content creator that's going to put their video on this thing and not put it on YouTube?
Oh, probably not.
Probably not. So
let's go back to the early days of
Apple's number one got to convince content creators to put stuff on there in the first place, which I assume is going to be extra work. So, a bother. And then they've got to convince, and then if some content creators do that, then Apple's got to convince people like, oh, get out of your habit of going to YouTube and, come over here, and you better not be using Overcast or Castro or, any of those things. And do they have an Android podcast player? I don't know. Does Apple have an Android?
No, I don't think so.
So, it's a niche within a niche, I don't see this getting much traction because, first of all, why would content, going to be the last, not that nobody will do it, but it'll be the last place. People will put their content everywhere else, and then some of them maybe will add this, but I think it's going to be really hard.
Okay, so Apple has been in the video space, though, from the beginning. Just the question becomes, how was it consumed? But back in the early days, I mean, does anybody remember the French Maids podcast?
Oh my God, I forgot about that. What they teach you how to do things, but they were dressed as French maids.
Yes.
Oh, how about Tiki Time TV?
Exactly.
I forgot about that too until just now.
There were all those original video podcasts that, and look, not by today's standards, they were like thumbnails, but they were video. And I gotta believe that in those early days, Apple's, I guess iTunes was the podcatcher then. I know they displayed video because I think I watched them on some of the early video iPods. So, it's interesting that it's taken this long for Apple to come back to it and recognize it, but maybe they didn't encourage it. What I don't know is, in the interim, when podcasts became a thing that big studios were producing, I don't know if the podcasts are audio or video in what is now Apple Podcasts. Then was Apple Music. So I did want to call out here. Barry said the max headroom jump cut is a style that he thinks some creators embrace on purpose.
Yeah.
Either that or they're just lazy. So, and he agrees with you, Jim, on YouTube about the video. And I agree 100% on that. Yeah. I mean, that's what YouTube built its bones on.
Yeah.
So stay tuned as we get more, we'll talk about it. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to bring up one other thing. And that is that by its very nature, just so you as the content absorber, what's the word I want?
Consumer.
Thank you. Brain dead. It's going to suck up a lot more of your bandwidth to download video than audio. So
is that what they're going to do? Well, and it would also take device space too. Or are they going to stream it?
Yeah,
you can do either. It looks like.
Yeah, but these are all things that have to be answered, and you as the consumer have to be aware of it. So that's it. We'll let you know as we find out more.
Hey, Chuck, I need to fix something I said that was wrong. I said Tiki Time TV. That's not right. It's Tiki Bar TV. I dropped a link into our private chat because I still can't get stuff to post in the live chat.
I will take that and throw that into the YouTube chat for you, Jeff. Thank you. Yes. I'd forgotten about Tiki Bar TV. Whoops, that's not it. Yeah, those are the early days of real experimentation when things were just completely off the wall.
Good times.
I'm surprised that's still even out there.
I miss those.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.